Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Derek and Eric here. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. We got a couple of not particularly happy stories.
Not especially.
Two sad stories today, but they are big news, so we wanted to cover them for you guys. The first is a huge story. Jamie Foxx, the multi-talented actor, musician. I mean, there's nothing that Jamie Foxx can't do.
We always say, arguably one of the most talented people in the industry.
Yeah.
There's nothing he can't do.
Hard to argue against him for that slot and that designation. He's been hospitalized now for what his family's calling a medical complication. And that's the term that his daughter, Corinne, used in an Instagram post where she said, "We wanted to share that my father, Jamie Foxx, experienced a medical complication yesterday. Luckily, due to quick action and great care, he is already on his way to recovery. We know how beloved he is and appreciate your prayers. The family asked for privacy during this time." Now, we don't know the details of what that condition is, but we do know that it was serious enough that he had to be hospitalized. This is not just a headache or something like that he was recovering at home from or had a visit from a medical professional at his house. He needed to be in a hospital, so that's serious.
The weird thing is that a source tells us that he's communicating now.
Yes.
Which, if you're unable to communicate, that's something major.
And communication is a very broad term. Communication can be writing things on a pad of paper. Often you use...
It can be squeezing a hand.
It can be squeezing a hand. It just shows that you're responsive. It doesn't say that he is speaking. It doesn't say that he's really alert beyond just an ability to communicate, which is as broad as you can get. So there's a lot of concern about this. I think, the family has asked for privacy, but Jamie Foxx is such an enormous figure in pop culture, and he's very relevant now. He's filming this movie called Back in Action. It's got Glenn Close and Cameron Diaz also. They're on location in Atlanta.
Famously, that's a big deal that Cameron Diaz is in it because she had retired.
Yes.
Jamie Foxx had to kind of talk her into coming out of retirement. Remember, he got Tom Brady to tell her, like, yeah, it's good to unretire. And there have been some difficulties on this set. Apparently, people said that he's had meltdowns and fired a bunch of people and that he's been difficult.
Right.
Which is not something you usually hear about Jamie Foxx.
You really don't. You hear about him, he likes to go to Vegas. He loves to be in the nightlife, not in a reckless way. I'm not sort of saying, but he enjoys living life to the fullest. The stories we hear about Jamie Foxx are often like, he's karaokeing and to the crowd, and he's so talented that there are a lot of fun clips about Jamie Foxx just sort of living life to the fullest. But you're right, this set has been a bit chaotic. It was reported, as you said, that he sort of was on set and ended up getting rid of executive producers, directors. This doesn't sound like a calm movie set. It sounds like a troubled one. And you often hear that, a troubled production yields a sort of troubled and flawed product. We don't know yet. Apparently, it's still filming, and it is highly anticipated because of Cameron Diaz sort of comeback.
It's not like Jamie Foxx needs a comeback or anything. He just had the Spider-Man movie a year and a half ago, is one of the biggest movies of all time. He's still Jamie Foxx. It's not like he's in a slump and needs a hit.
Yeah.
Maybe he's putting some pressure on this, and I don't know. I'm completely just speculating.
Yeah, we're
here.
sort of speculating about trying to make a connection between this medical event and what's happening on the set, where we've heard the term meltdown, which you said we don't hear with Jamie Foxx all that often. But I want to sort of emphasize that we don't know that there's a connection between these two. We don't know if he's experiencing so much stress that it led to a medical complication. These could be entirely distinct events. But the timing's interesting, and we wanted to sort of note that's what's going on in his life professionally, and here's what's happening sort of on a personal level, and it's not looking good.
And it's just odd that he's communicating now is the weird thing to me. Like that is scary. If it's just said, oh, he had something happen on set, had to go to hospital, he's fine. Okay, that could be any number. You could have banged your shin really hard. I mean, you never know. But
yeah, he's a guy who sort of, now Jamie Foxx is in his 50s. So he's not a young man anymore. And so medical events do happen, and he lives life pretty quickly, right? I mean, this is not a guy who has sort of eased up and taken his foot off the gas. He's very much has a full schedule. He just had a Netflix movie about vampires. I mean, this is not a guy who has slowed down, really.
Right.
And at times when you're in your 50s, your body sometimes tells you got to slow down. So I don't know if, I don't know if his workload is related to this, because we have such vague details. Medical complication could be anything under the sun. But you're right to seize on this word communicating, because I did as well. It's such an interesting term to use, and these statements, when they're written by reps for people as big as Jamie Foxx, they're very specific, and they're choosing their words purposefully.
And it seems, obviously, the daughter saying respect the family's privacy, which nobody would have even known this happened.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of privacy. But to issue the statement, well, I guess we're just hearing from a source he's communicating. That's not the statement they issued, but there's gonna have to be something expounded upon on this at some point, because that's worrisome.
I agree. I think this is a developing story, and we won't have any sort of clarity or comfort until Jamie Foxx himself tweets something or like a picture from the hospital. I remember feeling this way about the Jeremy Renner story. The details were very vague. He was involved in a snowplow incident, which sounds horrendous. We've since learned that it was one of the most horrific accidents imaginable. But the only time we ever ended up feeling like a little bit better about what happened and that he was going to be okay was when he started sort of taking selfies of himself in the hospital. You saw how horrific it was, but he was alive and he was recovering. I think Jamie Foxx is in a similar situation where I'm glad to hear he's communicating, but until I see what that really means and what this type of complication, people are going to be really concerned. They're going to continue to look for news updates. We'll obviously cover it as closely as everyone.
Even calling it a medical complication is different than saying a medical emergency. Because emergency, you would think, could be something just, unexpected, just happened.
Yes.
Maybe
a heart attack,
stroke, something like that. But a medical complication, like you were saying before we started recording, like that's usually something after a procedure.
That's right. Usually you hear, complications following a surgical procedure. You can also have complications from an existing medical condition. So if you have sort of, and I don't know Jamie Foxx's medical history in that much detail, but if you have sort of lupus and you have an outbreak, that could be a complication from your existing condition. So we really don't know, but it doesn't sound like an emergency of the order that it just sort of hit him because they used the word complication.
And also, we're just all we have is this post to go by. The daughter said, due to quick action and great care.
Yeah.
If it needed quick action, then it seems like it was something
significant.
Serious.
Yeah. So we wish him well. We'll continue to cover the story. And, they're asking for privacy. But again, Jamie Foxx is such a big celebrity and people love him so much that they're going to look for the answers to this and won't feel okay about it until they hear
and that's we don't
results.
For his privacy, we don't have to obviously know his medical history or whatever, but I think people just want to know he's okay.
Are you all right?
Yeah, because it's his daughter posting he's okay, but you want to hear from him.
That's exactly right. All right, and that's a perfect segue for what will sort of make people feel okay about our next story, because the next story is a very active, pending story about Drake Bell, who is now, according to police in Daytona Beach, Florida, a missing person. There was a post that we saw early this morning that said officers are looking for Drake Bell, and there's a picture of Drake Bell from Drake and Josh. He's now he's a 36-year-old, but he was a very, very big star to a huge generation of people.
Teen star.
A big teen star. He's had sort of a troubled life. This is what the post says. It says he should be traveling in a 2022 gray BMW, and his last known location is potentially in the area of Mainland High School. On April 12th, 2023, just before 9 p.m., he is considered missing and endangered. So that's the really troubling part. We're seizing on words here that are used. This is used by cops that he's not only a missing person, because you can call that in if you have a friend who you haven't seen and he's been missing for sort of 48 hours. You call
even
the
that
cops.
It says he was missing since April 12th before 9 p.m. in Florida. That's not even 24 hours.
It's not that long ago.
It's barely 12 hours.
Right.
And they don't usually do a missing persons report within 12 hours.
That's right. That's right.
It's the endangered part.
Something triggered this endangered line. Now, again, we don't know why sort of he is considered endangered at this point. We'll continue sort of digging on that. But police are asking the public to come forward with any information about his whereabouts. He has led a sort of troubled existence. I think of not quite like sort of an Amanda Bynes or Britney Spears sort of mental health episodes in public, but he's had a checkered sort of run-ins with the cops and allegations of misconduct. He was sentenced to 2 years of probation recently in 2021. After he was charged with sexual abuse of an underage fan, sort of an inappropriate sort of exchange he had with a fan of his.
Who was 15.
Yeah, who said they were exchanging messages in 2017 while she was 15. He's obviously much older than that. She says it eventually turned sexual in nature and had photos, and this all happened over sort of social media. He resolved that case, but he's still obviously on probation. Things are not going, I would say, super well for Drake Bell. So I think people are on high alert when he goes missing, that things could sort of go off course.
And like you said, he's 36, missing from the area of a high school at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Why are you hanging out at a high school at 9 p.m.?
I don't know if that's just sort of a demarcation of sort of where his whereabouts so that people can orient themselves as to that's the last place he's seen. People drive by high schools. High schools are sort of landmarks that
you're right.
It
does just say
he was at the high school.
In the area. And if they're trying to track his phone, maybe that's the last place it was pinging.
It could have pinged while you drove by it or so forth. But you're right. People will look at every word of the few words that cops have released and try to relate it to Drake Bell's life. So, we don't know that it's a connection to this sort of case with the underage woman or anything like that, but it's interesting. And that's all that we're noting. We're sort of reading tea leaves here.
Not even, I don't think he was looking for underage girls.
We just don't know.
But just why would you be at a high school at 9 p.m.?
Yeah.
If you're 36 and don't have kids.
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
Random.
I don't know what else is in the area or why cops chose to say he was in that particular area rather than near the Starbucks on Mainland or near
there's got to be something else in that area.
Right. So, we'll continue to monitor it. Drake is sort of, I don't know. He's an interesting person. People care a lot about Drake Bell, and you'll see this.
Well, people grew up with him. Anybody you grow up with, you are always going to kind of care about.
Yeah, I feel like, and I've brought her up already, Amanda Bynes, when she was wandering the streets naked, that was a very big story because she was someone people grew up with. She was on All That, I think, on Nickelodeon. She was sort of the younger version of an improv comedian, I would say, and then she had
a good career, and she was transitioning to an adult career.
Yeah.
And then, and similar thing with Britney too. Obviously one of the biggest pop stars in the world, but people like little girls or boys grew up with Britney Spears and love her. They always will. And there's those people, for us that we loved as kids that you will always have that soft spot for. And it's troubling when you see them struggle.
It is. It's really troubling. It's a reminder that, when we were growing up, child stars, it was it was almost a cliche that you would have a troubled child star, right?
I mean Drew Barrymore was in rehab when she was 9 or 10 or something like that.
All the different Strokes kids, everyone sort of had a troubled transition to adulthood because you get fame very early on and it's sort of disorienting and you can have access to a lot of money and you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. It seems Drake hasn't sort of had a smooth path. Some people do, and I always thought that's a feature of the 80s that we'll figure out in the 90s where parents will be more cognizant of it and they'll look at the history, but it doesn't resolve itself because you'll always have youthful people who get into trouble because they get too much too fast. And it's sort of a feature of child stardom rather than sort of a bug that you can fix, right?
Right. And it depends on, what the home life is like and all that kind of stuff.
It's sad. It's sad. I Drake Bell is a little bit of a younger star than we're sort of connected to, but I see in our office people are really connected to this story.
Drake and Josh was a huge
thing
for them.
Drake and Josh was so big to them. It's sort of like when Todd Bridges and Dana Plato had their trouble from just different strokes for us. But we'll keep monitoring both of these stories on Jamie Foxx and Drake Bell.
Yeah, hopefully he's found soon and okay. You're right. The endangered part is, did someone kidnap him? Are they worried that he might hurt himself? We don't know.
Yeah,
it's just an odd word to throw in there.
It is. It really is, and it does create a sort of sense of urgency about finding him and at least sort of seeing if he's okay in the sort of most basic sense of the word. But that'll do it for us today. We'll see you guys tomorrow.